If you haven't already adjusted your phone, hope that you will so that it's on silent so that we won't be disturbed. Thank you for doing that. It's time to introduce our guest, and their family just walked in the door, so we're glad they're here. Our speaker today is Justin Cherry, and Jennifer, just stay standing. I know you don't like this, but that's Jennifer, his wife. And that's Riley, their little girl, and Gavin, their little young man. So let's welcome them. This family has spent the last 5 years in New Zealand planting a church in Auckland, the largest city of that country. At the time it was planted, and Justin may need to correct me if I don't get these stats right, but at the time it was the first church plant by Churches of Christ in that country in over 17 years, and it was the first plant by American missionaries in, I believe, over 30 years. The team is made up of 4 families. They were 3 originally, and 1 more has joined them since they've gone to the field. They've also had Amers among them, and they also welcome short-term interns to come over from time to time. They've had that in the past, and they're continuing that. Justin graduated in 2005 with his house shoes on. That's a personal joke. So he and his team went through the School of Missions in the fall of 2006. They worked on support for almost a year, getting to the field in the first part of 2008. They worked through all kinds of trials, as teams do: visa problems, working fun, not enough thereof, or any of, team dynamics, strategy decisions, and cultural adjustment, not to mention 5 pregnancies? Is that right? Well, yeah. Is that right, Jennifer? 5 pregnancies. So you can figure out from that what their strategy of church growth is. It's a team that has tried a lot of different things to contact, to interact with, to attract, to teach, and to convert people. There has been no inflexibility with this team in regard to mission strategy. Justin and Jennifer are a part of a very relationship-based ministry, and that'll become clear in Justin's presentation, I suspect, this morning. And as part of that team, they're a very talented couple in many ways. Justin is the teaching minister for that church planted congregation, so that tells you a little bit about what they believe his main giftedness is. Meanwhile, on an individual basis, they built a lot of relationships with people, some of which have resulted in conversion. Others are on various stages of their journey of faith. They use their home and Jennifer's hospitality skills in just a wonderful way to draw lots of people in. They spend a lot of time discipling people. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation this morning and that it sparked certainly some interest in New Zealand, but certainly in missions overseas in general. Justin, come preach the word.
I want you guys to know I have graduated to shoelaces. I can tie them now, so I don't have to wear house shoes anymore. Actually, I pre-tied them and I slipped them on, but that's besides the point. I'm excited to be here with you guys this morning. It's been, I think, 4 years we thought, or we counted up since I've been to Lubbock last. It's still incredibly beautiful here. And as I think all the teachers can attest, I was probably the favorite student of all time. So, yeah, which is why I got such a great introduction. I had no idea how much trouble we were having adjusting being back until I watched my son have trouble wearing shoes everywhere he goes, because nobody wears shoes in New Zealand. And it's not because we don't have shoes. We do. We are a westernized society, just kids don't. And, well, some adults. But he didn't understand you couldn't go in a restaurant without wearing your shoes. He didn't understand the no shoes, no shirt, no service stuff. We're having trouble with language barriers. I'm asking people where the toilet is, and they look at me like I said a bad word. And I'm like, well, that's what it is. But okay. But that all is to say it's because we've ingrained ourselves in a culture that was not our own, and all of a sudden 5 years into the work, I now find myself feeling more like a New Zealander in many ways than I do like an American. And it's a really weird feeling to be back. It's something I'm proud of, that we've ingrained ourselves in the work to that point that we can think like a Kiwi. I need to think like a Kiwi. I just wish I knew how to flip my mind and think like an American when I'm back in America. So I say all that to say, if I say some things that sound weird, I apologize. I am of a different land right now. I want you to think about this as we talk about New Zealand a little bit, but I want you to think about, what do single moms, what do people struggling with depression, what do those struggling with sexual addictions, what do those who struggle with abuse all have in common? I want you to think about that question. Lately, I've been really feeling this connection to Moses. I've been reading a lot about Moses. I've been studying Moses. And it's not because I think that I'm going to be called by God to lead a people, out of bondage. I feel like Moses because of this. You get in the first part of Exodus, and Moses has got a great life. He's doing some great things. And he kind of jumps ahead a little bit, and he decides to take some things into his own hands. He sees an Egyptian beating the Israelites. He goes and he kills the Egyptian. And later on, we learn in Acts that Moses thought it was his time to lead the people out of bondage. And we find out it wasn't the right time, so he runs away out of fear. When we first got to New Zealand, we tried a lot of things. I think the first presentation I ever gave and report we sent back, I had 50 or 60 pages of notes of things we had tried, what it cost us, what did work and didn't work. And I remember handing that with just full pride. And I remember one of our mentors looking at us and going, "You've done way too much." Like, are you breathing? Are you doing anything? What are you guys doing? And they were all good things, and I wouldn't take it away because it shaped our identity of the church now in New Zealand. But we kind of jumped ahead a little bit. We left this place, we put our strategy together, and it was a good strategy. But we had to learn to be flexible because we got there and we started implementing our strategy, and it wasn't working. I don't know if you guys have ever felt this way, but when we got there, we were bringing a fresh perspective to church. We were going to serve. We were going to love. We were different than everybody. I'm just saying. So we opened the doors, and here they come. No one. Okay. And that was like our first 6 months. I'm preaching to my classmates. They're tired of hearing me. We have Riley's the only kid in kids' class. We had no idea how hard this was going to be. Here, we talked a lot about how hard it was going to be. But then when you get there and it's harder than you ever imagined, you got to be flexible. You got to rethink. You got to step back for a minute and say, okay, how do I do this? How do I get this done? And it's got to be in God's hands. It's got to be in God's timing. And I think that's where I'm connecting with Moses. Let me go back to Moses for just a second here, and I'm going to get to the New Zealand work, because I want to share some really cool stories with you. Moses goes out into the desert, and I think he had to learn some things. He learned responsibility. He tended sheep. He learned how to take care of people. He was given a family, and he learned how to put others before himself. And I don't know how many burning bushes that Moses passed before he finally got his attention. Like, God finally was in this burning bush, and Moses goes, well, that's different. And what I want to get at with that is, at some point, Moses had to learn, just like all of us, that this is God's way, and it's God's time. And we sometimes want to rush it. We want to get out there, we want to serve people, we want to love people, we want to change their life, and we rush it. But really what we need to do is step back a little bit and spend more time with God. And that was the biggest change that we made as a team. I was talking to Charles last night. I was like, how do I tell you guys our journey of 5 years in 20 minutes? It might be 30 by the time I'm done. No, I'm just kidding. But how do we do that? And here's what it boiled down to. Our biggest journey happened in this. We believed God was with us. We got to the mission field, and we said, all right, God, let's go. What we learned was we needed to sit down for a minute and say, all right, God, let us be with you. Let us be with you in prayer. Let us be with you in spirit. Let us be with you in our reading and our devotional time with one another. And then show us the way, and we'll follow you. And it made the hugest difference in our mission. It changed everything. And here's how. When Moses finally got a hold of him in the burning bush, what happened? God showed him the wonders of all the things that he can do in the world. He freed the people of Israel. He used his servant Moses to be a mouthpiece. And the faithfulness of Moses in his life. I don't think Moses went into the desert and all of a sudden was not faithful. I think he stayed faithful the whole time. And God said, because of your faithfulness, I now will be faithful back. And that's what I think happened in New Zealand. Because of our faithfulness to God, because we said, God, in hard times and bad times and everything we're going to go through, we're going to stay with you. Because we were faithful to God, God said, now I will show you what I can do in the work. And he guided us. And so here's what happened. I'm going to tell you a few stories, because I think they're the most powerful thing that's happened in our work. We have strategy, we have vision, we are building a model for discipleship, but all of that fails in comparison to the stories that I will tell you of how God has worked in the lives of these individual people. So the first person is Scott and Steph. I'm going to put them as a couple. They're about to be married. We had a strategy, and it was called Starbucks. I needed an office. I didn't have an office. Starbucks was close, so we went to Starbucks, and I just started meeting people to the point that we knew everybody in Starbucks. We knew every employee. We knew the manager. The manager let us use Starbucks. One of the creative things we tried is we did church at Starbucks for a summer. It was good and bad. It was really good because people would kind of, scoot their chair over trying to hear what you're talking about. And the minute you said Jesus, they're like, oh. But then they kept scooting back a little bit. But it was a nightmare because here's all these kids at Starbucks, and they're just going crazy on caffeine because you just do anything you can to get them to sit still. Here, Riley, have a latte. So that was a nightmare. But it introduced us to the culture, and people started to recognize who we were because we did things out and about, unashamed of the gospel. But I got to know the people of Starbucks, and Scott and Steph were working there. And so we started to study with them. I had this really killer presentation of evangelism. I was like, I'm going to study, and then he's going to be like, yeah, I need to give my life to Jesus. And so we did, and nothing happened. And I was just like, God, come on, I need some help here. I'm clever. I'm likable. Come on. So we pray. We spent time praying over these people. And you keep studying with them. You don't give up. You keep studying, and you go a little bit more. What part of my study did you not understand? Finally, what I realized was I wasn't speaking their language. I was using studies that I had learned, but they weren't working, so I created my own, one that I felt would be adaptable for a Kiwi to understand. So I sat down with him, and it made sense. And I never use this terminology with him. And he said this. He said, Justin, I need to be baptized. I need Jesus as my Lord and my Savior. I need to be married to Jesus. I never taught him that. I taught him he needed Jesus. I taught him a lot of things. I never taught him the marriage principle. God worked in this guy's life. He used me as a mouthpiece to teach this guy. He's now one of our leaders. Now, he's on a journey. Like anybody, he's kind of fallen at times, and he struggled. He's let the cares and the worries of the world get in on him, and we have to continually go back and redisciple. That's life. We all kind of go through those waving times, but I have high hopes for this guy, so we continue to pray. His fiancée is an amazing girl. She was kind of like him in many ways. She accepted the gospel quickly, but it changed her, just transformed her, and she's never looked back. Nothing can faze her. She works at Ernst & Young, an accounting firm. She's shameless in telling people about Jesus, who are her bosses, her coworkers. Somebody has a bad day, and there was a big divorce in the office, and she just straight away said, have you ever thought you might need Jesus in your life? That's amazing. These things we hadn't taught them yet. These things are just so new to them. We were just trying to get them to understand they needed Jesus, and then we were going to work on how you need to give Jesus to others. They captured a vision. So that was that couple. The next guy that I want to tell you about is one that I'm still mind-boggled about. I have no understanding. We have 3 atheists that were attending our church. One of them is still wavering to this day, but they would not miss. They would come to everything we did. They would serve. They loved everything that we were doing. We would tell people they needed Jesus, and one of them, the guy I'm about to tell you about, we were at a car wash, and he didn't believe in God yet, but he was telling the lady we were washing her car that she needed Jesus. And so we're like, well, okay, all right, Marty. You tell that lady. We're going to work on that later. So one day we said, Marty, there's a long story of how we got to meet this guy, but his family came from a broken relationship, and now they're very healthy, came from 2 different marriages. They have kids that have been combined through 2 different marriages. But he didn't believe. And we said, Marty, you guys have been coming. We just want to study the Bible with you. We just want you to know why we teach what we teach. Nothing more. He was never confrontational because we weren't confrontational. So we sat down with him and we put a Bible in front of him and we said, Marty, can you read John chapter 1 following? So Marty opens his Bible and he says, all right, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Stupid question. Is the Word Jesus? Yeah. Have you read your Bible? No, but it makes sense. It does? Okay. Okay, so Jesus was in the beginning with God. Yeah, Marty, he was in the beginning with God. Okay, that's okay. Jesus is God? Yeah, Jesus is God. You mean they're the same person? They're the same person. Guys, this changes everything. I, to this day, have no idea what we did. Other than put a Bible in front of him. He began reading more. He would disagree on interpretation with our staff. Guys, I see what you're saying, but I just think actually Jesus is saying this. Oh, you're right. Oh. I mean, how does that happen? And then one day he was reading and he said, guys, I need to be baptized. I want to be baptized for remission of my sins. I want Jesus to be my Savior. And we had this amazing baptism. And he's been on fire since that day, serving people, caring for people, leading, opening his home for people, having small groups in his home. Matter of fact, he was a Christian for a month, and we had a small group in his house, and he wanted to do it again, and he wanted someone else to lead the small group this time to facilitate, but they could use his house. And we had to tell him, Marty, people aren't like you. I mean, some people just aren't ready yet. Because he was really bold. He got up in our church service one day and said, you guys, you've heard my story 3 times. You need to be up here preaching. You men, you got stories. Get up here and preach. And we're like, whoa, okay. But here's what he said. He's been a Christian for a month, and he says, hey, if somebody's having trouble with it, I'm okay with co-leading with them and helping them along. Tell you what, I mean, you want to know God at work? You see God at work when you have no idea what you did to get somebody to see that Jesus is Lord. And here's what I've learned. I'm going to tell you a couple more stories too, but here's what I've learned. We want evangelism to be harder than it is, but it's not. Evangelism is simply making the gospel clear. That's it. Because all we did for a lot of these people is put a Bible in front of them and let them read and then answer questions as they had them. And self-discovery happened. We taught. I mean, we didn't just throw them a Bible and say, figure it out. We taught them along the way, but we just made it clear. We didn't do anything special. We didn't get overly creative. We tried to at first, and some places that works. You might go somewhere and you might say, well, I don't agree with that, and that's okay. I'm giving you my context. What happened for me, what I found is I caught fire of the passion of evangelism when I realized that it actually could be easy. When it could be simple as here's a Bible, let's read it together, and let's see what happens next. There is a girl named Alice. Alice also was someone who thought she believed in a God, but used different religions as a tool belt. And Jesus was kind of one of those other tools that she would use to become a good person. And so she believed in Hinduism because it made her a good person. She believed in Buddhism because it made her a good person. She believed in Baha'i. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that religion, but it's kind of a believe in all type things. Because it made her a good person. Her identity was based on being a good person. And so they started studying. Jennifer and another lady started studying with Alice, and they got to a section in their study where the author of the book they were reading said, you are not good enough to get to heaven. You are not good enough to save yourself. And she was like, I'm done. I don't want anything to do with this. So she wrote a letter. She said, I love you girls, but I don't want to do this anymore. Rocked her identity. So what do? Do you give up and you say, okay, well, she's not ready? My wife is creative. She's a genius. She's a genius evangelist, so she doesn't know it. So if she's listening to this sermon, she'll find out. But she decided we would use Alice as a consultant. Alice is a teacher, and Jennifer helps teach the children's classes. So she was like, let's use her as a consultant. Let's bring her in on Sundays and say, are we teaching our Bible classes for the kids how you would as a New Zealander? So Alice would come, and she would listen, and she would give her advice, and she loved it. And she started coming even into our adult classes, and she'd give things on like service projects. She'd give us ideas on how we could serve better. And one day, out of the blue, she calls Jennifer, and she says, all right, I want to study again. But this time, can we just read the Bible? And I'm sure Jennifer was like, well, yeah, I would have done that the first time, but you wanted to read Francis Chan. So we read Francis Chan, which, by the way, I got to meet Francis Chan not long ago, and I shared the story with him. I told him how he almost ruined us a convert. Yeah, luckily he thought it was funny. But she said, I want to read the Bible, and just read the Bible. That's a lady that can serve. And so be praying for her. The last person I'm going to tell you about is, let me recheck, because there's so many, and I don't want to. I got so many great stories, and if I told you some of them, I'd probably start crying, so I'm not going to tell you all of them. I'm going to tell you about Danny. And this is the last one I'll tell you, and then I want to just wrap it up. Danny had a very hard life. Danny is a Samoan, a big Samoan. And the boy can eat. So if you ever have him over for dinner, man, you better hit the whole grocery store. So Danny lived a very hard life. When Danny was 14, he had his first child. When Danny was 16, he started abusing alcohol and drugs, and he ran away to Russia, as you do when you're from New Zealand. So Danny ran away. He came back, and his kids were taken away from him because he left. He came back. He struggled with depression. He struggled with alcohol, and he then found another lady in his life, and things were looking up. Things were getting better. He got engaged, and then his fiancée got pregnant. She had a miscarriage. She committed suicide. You want to talk about a rough life? I thought I had a rough life. He's telling this testimony, and it's sad to hear. It's sad to see the things he struggled with. But it was at that time that he realized he needed somebody in his life. He didn't know what, but he needed somebody. He needed something. Danny worked in the shopping center where we frequented all the time. Elijah got to know him first, and Elijah invited him to come to the barbecues. We do these third Sunday barbecues. Greatest thing we ever did. We packed our home at times with anywhere from 30 to 70 people in a home, just feeding them. And we would tell them what we were about, why we moved to New Zealand. And we were very careful not to push too hard. We wanted them to get to know us a little bit. New Zealand's very much a relationship-oriented community. If I went up to a New Zealander and I first started trying to just convert them, I would lose my battle. But if I would build a relationship, if I'd get them in for a meal, if I would show them I actually love them for more than a personal gain or for more than just a convert, they would listen. And so that's what we started doing. We started having people over for a meal. So Danny came to those meals, and Danny started listening to what we said, and it meant a lot to him that we were good people, that we were serving people, that we loved people. So then he started coming to church, and he started listening there. And then we do these things called DC3s, where we get together and you try to do no more than 3 people, and you just study the Bible. We open the Bible up, we read, we talk about it. And Danny started learning from that. And one day, Danny just said, I need to be baptized. To this day, we have some that we really have hit the point where we said, you need to make a decision in your life for Christ. But a lot of them, we never had to get to that point because they made it themselves. They made that decision themselves because we made the gospel clear. Danny's now one of our leaders. We're contemplating with Danny about planting another church in South Auckland. Danny works in the prison system, which is a perfect place for a big man like him. He can handle himself really well. The story I want to tell you about Danny is, real quick, is the transformation story. Danny had a hard life. He did a lot of bad things. He knows a lot of bad people. Danny, if you get in a fight in a dark alley, you want Danny on your side. I promise you. When Danny got engaged, we were going to have a bachelor party. There were a lot of jokes because, there's 4 ministers on staff that Danny's good friends with that are going to go to the bachelor party. So all his other friends, of course, we are the jokes. Which minister are we going to get drunk and all this kind of stuff. Lige was safe because Lige was administering he was going to marry them. And so they're like, oh, we won't get you drunk, Lige, you'll be fine. And we're just kind of like, are we going to get forced drunk? What's going to happen here? But Danny then got an offer from a friend, and the best way I can say it is his friend owns an adult establishment. And he came to Danny and he said, Danny, I want to give this to you. You guys have the whole place for free. Everything you want's free. Danny said, I can't. That's just not my life anymore. I can't do that. He said, that wouldn't make God happy, and that's not what I'm about. I'm about Jesus now. That's transformation. I mean, we could have easily gone into Danny's life and said, Danny, you shouldn't do that. You don't do that as a Christian. We just stayed back and we watched. And Danny made these decisions because he knew God fully. God had transformed him. I tell you all these stories, and I wish I could have time to share more with you. I'm so passionate about our work and what we're doing. I'm so passionate about the discoveries that we found and what's working in New Zealand, what's not. It's simply relationship. It's building relationship. It's loving people. It's serving people. It's caring for people. It's making the gospel clear. It's not being afraid to be bold with the gospel. But above all of that, here's what I've learned, and this is what I want you to walk away with. In the end, it's in God's time, and it's God's way. He's the one that has the power. He's the one who has the strength. So if you do nothing else when you leave this place, spend time with God. Because if you'll do that, if you'll spend significant time with God in prayer and spend significant time with God in studying your Bible and in communication with whoever your team is or the people around you, I promise you God will lead the way. And He will make clear the path of what He's doing. And all you have to do is follow. I pray for you guys. I love you guys. And I look forward to hearing great things from you. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Justin's a dear friend. His family is very precious to us. Those of us who love New Zealand are so glad you're there. Kara and I talk about this team frequently, of course, and we think they're pretty quirky. We knew they were quirky when they went, but they fit New Zealand very, very well. The Lord has selected people that fit very well there. And I thank God for their approach there and the success that the Lord's given them up to this point. They have visa problems going on in their team that they have to face, decisions to make.